I'm currently Director of Children's Services. We are known as DCSs for short, in the wonderful borough of Gateshead, next door to, but not to be mistaken for, the equally wonderful city of Newcastle. So the Angel and the Bridge and the Sage and the Baltic and the Metro Centre are in Gateshead, okay? What does the DCS do then? In a nutshell, people aged pre-birth to 19 who live, work and study in my place are my responsibility. If they're registered with the Gateshead GP, they use our children's centres, play or parenting services, schools or the local college. If they get a bucket full of GCSEs, A-levels and diplomas, and if they don't. If they want to engage with us, and if they don't. If they win the Duke of Edinburgh Award at any level, or are star volunteers, performers, campaigners, spokespeople, community activists, already young leaders and citizens. If they need support because they have a special need, because they can't or they won't communicate, or are on a therapeutic programme, or are a young carer. If they live in a settled or a troubled family. If they need low-level mental and emotional support, or far more highly specialist and robust interventions, are in need, at risk, have a child protection plan, are young parents themselves, young offenders, incarcerated or otherwise, or those young offenders' victims, if they're ill or disabled, if they die aged under 18 from whatever cause, if they're in danger of being taken into, are already in, or have recently left care. Put simply, they are mine. And so are their families, their schools, the other settings they use, and everybody in their communities. We are also corporate directors in our councils. We play our part in the top teams that regenerate and plan and care for our localities, and we all work with other agencies. It's the best, and it's by far the scariest job I have ever done. DCSs were created as a group of 150, the first of us beginning the job on the 1st of April 2005 by the 2004 Children Act. Most of us have been in post since 05 or 06, with a bit of turnover in some places, and the latest places to appoint one of us was in 2008. We have been dubbed, and I dub us, a pioneering generation. The first to do this statutorily framed job, many of us starting at more or less the same time. And in this address, I want to picture for you who we are and what we do. DCS has come from a wide range of professional backgrounds, usually, but not exclusively, education or social care. And we're a feisty bunch. Not to say quite difficult, actually, as many of us have had to be to get where we are. Because at one and the same time, we pioneers are making our landscape and drawing its maps and guidebooks, both for ourselves, the rookies, and those who will pass this way in future. We believe, no doubt arrogantly, that actually we are the people doing this job, the size of whose remit we can't hold for long in our heads, that actually nobody else ever having done it, we may be the harshest critics of what we do and the best equipped to push ourselves and each other to do it better. We are, of course, currently the best beloved targets for, and weary of the sometimes damaging nonsense peddled by, a range of media folk who consider it a virtue that they know nothing at all about what we do. In the last 6 months, we've found ourselves damned in part of what we do, damned without the grace or reciprocal courtesy of being listened to when we explain the reality. I agree with Lem Cisse, a black poet, friend of mine, lifelong friend, who theorises that we are judged in this way by a society that is horribly aware of and fascinated by, but cannot face the fact that it needs us. And yet, it needs us. We lead and manage the people who are handiest scapegoats in this work, people whose existence allows society to forget that it is not the professionals who hurt other people's innocent children. We help the nation have somewhere to put its sense of subliminal shame that there is a need for these professionals in the first place. Perhaps diminishing that need is what, as a society, we should be addressing. We've recently found ourselves damned either as former teachers who know nothing about social work or former social workers who know nothing about schooling. For the record, I used to be a secondary English and drama teacher with a history degree. And I have to say, I was bloody brilliant. And if you put me back into a classroom now, I would fail. I left that classroom 20 years ago, pre-information communication technology, just as the first national curriculum was published and before it got going. DCSs, you will not be amazed to hear, believe that what matters most is not what we used to be whenever it was we used to be it, but what we are now, and what we together will make for the future of our children and young people. I hope you can see some of the parallels in your worlds. My schools are so successful against every measurable and inspected indicator that it's a pretty scarily powerful place to be some days. I can tell you why they're so good. It goes beyond our truly great teachers and beyond a strong sense of our autonomous schools. Note to Her Majesty's loyal opposition, it's 20 years since I was in control of my primary schools, back to the script. It's our autonomous schools who willingly work with each other and with us in collaborative endeavour. Their success is because they believe every child has a right to play, to sing and dance, to learn about history, to create, to run, to express themselves, to meet artists across all the art forms, and journalists and architects and thinkers and scientists and environmental campaigners. It's because our children's centres and schools take youngsters to the cathedral, the mosque, the mountains, the science labs at Newcastle University, the museums, to meet and work with role-playing staff at our region's Anglo-Saxon, Roman and Victorian open-air museums, and they take them to the seaside. It's because all our schools have a creativity and culture ambassador who each ensures their school capitalises on artistic and cultural experience. They drag everybody back to asking, what would we do if we were addressing this issue creatively when things in schools get too prosaic? Many of them are scientists or general managers, not artists. We support them through a physical and an e-network that continue to prod their thinking, run by, not by my department, but by artist practitioners and events staff in cultural services. Our success is there because we have and we use Bede's World, the Centre for Life, Hadrian's Wall, Durham Cathedral, and a whole lot more. We have the Sage Gateshead, we have the Baltic, which we help to build and help to revenue fund. There are just under 30,000 children and young people in my schools. They work with half or less than half the money per child that an inner London school receives. Calm down, Maggie. Despite the serious levels of poverty in my borough. Of those nearly 30,000, over 3,000 learn at least one instrument, because we make it possible. This year, over 4,000 took part across a day-and-a-half's performance in our dance festival, including dancers in wheelchairs and on walking frames, and at least 4 staff troupes. 3,000 will sing and play in our music showcase in June, and they will know the history and the passion behind the regional folk music that makes up part of it. 3,000 took part in either our line dancing day, that was fantastic, or our cheerleading day, or both. 5,000 will run and jump and throw and cheer at our athletics festival in July. 30 of my looked after children recently had 2 artists to themselves for a year and explored painting, expression, creativity, no product to speak of, just experience. 4 young women, all of them variously troubled, created a sculptural piece last year, a maquette, with a professional artist, a half-finished sized work based on life being a lottery, where you win or you lose by the spin of a wheel or the roll of the dice inside that wheel. It's been at the National Gallery, and it will become part of our public art programme if you'd like to put some money in a bucket. At a recent school opening, HRH the Duke of Kent spoke to 5 15-year-olds who were being taught a regional craft by 5 85-year-olds. Not just that day, but for part of a day every week. The craft they were doing mattered a lot less than that in their lives outside school, Because they'd learned together and they were friends, they spoke to each other civilly at the bus stop or on the estate across the 70 years between them, and they were no longer mutually afraid. We live creativity, breadth and diversity in our learning because we recognise it's good for the soul, but it's also good for the statistics. And if we can do it, then so can anybody else. And now we're all feeling really good. Time for the challenge. Who's saying what culture is? Phil Redmond, speaking on Liverpool 08, has already said that as well as introducing and glorying in the greats, who are of course great because they are the greats, but also in part because we delight in them and we continue to say they are. As well as that, we must be willing to get closer to the floor, to start where the people are. And that may not be where you or I would like. I'm talking about families who either don't know, or if they do know, they don't care, where your or my theatre or concert hall or gallery or museum or park or garden actually are, and who wouldn't know how to get in, and by that I mean literally and metaphorically, if they did know. They're, for example, the mums and dads in my borough who nearly 5 years into its existence, and despite living a mile away from its shining curves and its extremely accessible programming, have been to the Sage Gateshead just the once, and that was because their 9-year-old was singing in our showcase. The researched and recognised danger of those of us who can, metaphorically speaking, read the Latin in the books in the chained library of the arts, saying to the people who can't, here's the lifeblood we live by and so should you, but it's here on our terms, as we're almost bound to do, we are human after all, is that even as we say it, the steel circle of some people engaging and some not is sealed. If we're not careful, we participate in creating cultural palaces, real or psychological palaces, which some people don't come near, even though that's what we expect, even when we think we're enabling them to do so. Or if they do come once, they don't come back. If what some people with whom the arts and culture want to engage in is filtered through their life stories and not ours, if they want, and in the first instance they need, what's safe on their terms, bounded by reality influenced by the Beckhams, the PlayStation, the X Factor, Newcastle United, Strictly Come Dancing, Underpass Graffiti, The Simpsons and the soaps, then that's where we start. And with some of them we will get a heck of a lot further than that, and with some of them we may not. A lot of the most creative things that happen in my community are sparked by the young people themselves, by youth workers, by social workers, by young offenders workers, by volunteers. My schools are very creative, but they no longer work in a bubble called schooling, and neither can we. And here's the final challenge. How broad are we prepared to go? My creativity stretches across my musicianship and my writing. It spills over into my hill walking. It's about my garden, digging the potatoes and planting the beans, as well as smelling the roses. It's in my husband's polymath approach to his engineering and mathematical background and abilities, all of which are a mystery to me. And it's in his equal ability to interpret Bloom's taxonomy of learning so it reads and feels like a poem. It's knowing young people may learn expressive language in and through literary text, but they could become scientists or ICT specialists applying it in other problem solving. Creativity and culture are not the sole province of the arts, and we limit ourselves and everybody else if we think or say that they are.